And we are live. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our September movie club. I did remember to change the slide because if anybody out there watched our music thing, I forgot to change and I thought it was August because September doesn't exist in my head. Before we get started on talking about The Great Dictator, I do want to go over a little bit of housekeeping that I go over every single time we do this. So this is one of 3 multimedia clubs that we have at the Dragonfly Arts. We have a Facebook group that I'm going to leave up on the screen while I do this little spiel, cover up Ryan's face and everything. We have 2 monthly clubs. This is our movie club. We also have a monthly listening club, which we actually had on Thursday night. So a few days ago, we listened to Taylor Swift and had a discussion about her and her music. We also have a quarterly book club that meets every 3 months, and we will be meeting next month to talk about Dracula. So those are our multimedia clubs. If you're a part of our Facebook group, we announce them on the 1st of every month. So I will be announcing our October picks tomorrow morning. So you can absolutely get on our Facebook group there and find out what those are. If you have suggestions, you can also suggest them through the Facebook group. And if you'd like to join us for these discussions live, let us know. We only let about 4 people on the calls total, so it's a very limited amount of space. But you can always join us live or comment on these videos after the fact. We still get notifications when you have comments. It will actually give us a time signature if you give it to us on Facebook, and we can find out what point in the discussion you are actually talking about. And I always want to talk about these more, so please join the discussion. And if you like this and you'd like to support us, we do have a Patreon. Right now, everything that we do is open to the public for free. Sorry, that's a very low-flying helicopter and it distracted me. You can support us for as little as $2 a month. Right now, we don't have any perks because, like I said, everything that we do is free and open. But supporting us in that way helps us not just with keeping these clubs going, but also with, we have physical meetups in the Los Angeles area. We have events that we do. We also, have a series of phone calls to keep it ourselves to connect us throughout the week.
Yeah, basically, it's free to the public, but there are expenses on our end. So all the things we do have a cost, and we appreciate your support if you'd like to give it.
Yeah. So on that note, I am going to go back to my first slide. I told everybody this before the call. I am feeling very tired today, so I apologize in advance for how many times I'm going to misclick on these slides. But let's start our conversation about The Great Dictator, which is 1940s Charlie Chaplin. So I always ask at the start of every single one of these calls, but have you guys seen this movie before watching it for the club?
No, only the end speech.
Yeah, I watched this in college, probably not for a class, but just on my own. But I watched it again yesterday. So
this was a required watch for my film school as a political statement and film and the power of film, and for obvious reasons. So yes, I've seen this before.
So there will be spoilers throughout this call, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a synopsis brief before we really get into the nitty-gritty of it. So essentially, The Great Dictator follows 2 people who look very, very similar, both played by Charlie Chaplin. You have a Jewish barber who fought in World War I and had an injury after a plane crash and has been in a hospital with amnesia since and has no idea of the things that have happened in the interim. And then you have the Great Dictator himself, who is just trying to run a country, I guess. I don't really know.
Trying to take over the world, really.
He's trying to take over the world. They call him, he's the Fooey. He's not the Great Dictator. He's the Fooey. And it's a very clear parody of, Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think personally is one of my favorite things about this, is how this is all a parody essentially of World War II, but it was done before the US ever joined World War II. And I think Charlie Chaplin said that if he had known what was actually happening in Germany, he never would have made this. But he did send a copy of it to Hitler. So
I'm sure Hitler loved that.
there are no records, or rather there's mixed records depending on whether or not he actually watched it. So
some say he saw it twice.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, oligarch or dictators and people who put themselves on that kind of pedestal don't like parodies of themselves. So
I think it's more likely that they just don't get the connection. Especially because it seems such a clear thing for us looking at this, but Chaplin's also always kind of had the mustache, so
Do you think that inspired the film?
maybe people already were like, hey, you kind of look like him.
Right. You got the same style. Maybe do something, and maybe that's why he plays two characters.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
could
there's
100%
actually
see that.
there's actually a very interesting 52-minute documentary type of thing on the Criterion channel about this, and supposedly there were a lot more connections between Chaplin and Hitler than just the mustache. Basically, they were born 4 days apart, and they were both poor growing up. And Charlie Chaplin became famous before Hitler, and he had the mustache. And there is some debate that possibly Hitler was inspired to have the mustache because of Chaplin. But yeah, it's hard to get confirmation on anything like that, because who knows, really.
If he was a fan first, maybe he did watch it twice.
I was actually just reading on the Wikipedia page. I found the thing that Chaplin hated how much the similarities between him and Hitler and their background was. But I also saw the note that some of the signs in the shop windows in the ghetto in the film were written in Esperanto, a language that Hitler condemned as an anti-nationalist Jewish plot to destroy German culture because it was an international language whose founder was Jewish. And I did not notice that.
I've never seen Esperanto written. I thought it was just gibberish.
No. I actually know Esperanto. I got really, really bored at my college job. If you ever read the comic book Saga, that's all their magic is done in Esperanto. Fun fact there. Yeah, there's a lot of this movie that I'm actually really interested in, like a documentary. Ryan and I kind of tried to look for one briefly, but all we could find is like behind the scenes footage that somebody else was taking, and it doesn't have like any audio over it or anything, because there are some gags in this that I do not know how they were done.
Especially early on, the anti-air gun, and even the cannons. It had to be it's a practical effect. They had to build it, but I just couldn't imagine just that kind of building that prop, because it seems so cartoonish and functional.
Yeah, like the stunt work and practical effects are all top notch. I will say, I noticed a lot of rear projection, like even in scenes that didn't seem to require it. It seemed like he just used rear projection a lot. And on the topic of like documentaries to watch, like I said, the Criterion channel has this 52-minute one. It was made in 2002. I think it may have been called The Tramp and the Dictator. or something like that. And they also have this 25-minute video essay that I don't think had a date on it, but it seemed more recent than 2002. But supposedly production lasted for 450 something days. So, yeah, Charlie Chaplin was apparently a perfectionist on about the stunts and the props and things like that. So, and he was using his own money to produce this thing, so he could sort of do whatever he wanted. And so I'd imagine that the stuff like the cannons and other stunt work was just practiced over and over again and stuff like that. And also he apparently like tore down some sets and then rebuilt them to do reshoots on them. So he was always like tearing stuff down and rebuilding apparently.
That's like over 18 months in production. That's insane.
I think of like Hong Kong, like martial arts films where they take that long because you want to get the actual like shot so well done. But that was like extremely common for the time, and why a lot of those have that punch that they do. I'm gonna pick a new slide. Yeah, this is a fascinating movie, just as a satire as well. Because like I said, they didn't actually know what was happening in Germany when he made this. This is all based on hearsay. I even pointed it out when we were watching it, of just like, they sent them to a concentration camp and they received mail and then could send out a letter.
Yeah. And we're able to escape.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to move. So anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to really discuss? A favorite scene, perhaps?
I love that scene. That scene was great.
Some excellent floor work from the
Ryan goes,
juggling.
Ryan goes, you've watched a lot of circus acts. I've definitely seen people do this before.
Yeah, the Globe choreography was pretty amazing. And I think he would have been 50 years old or something, or maybe a bit older at this time. And yeah, it was just really impressive to see him dancing around and moving so nimbly. I remember there's this shot where he jumps from the floor up to the table, and it looks so effortless. Like,
sorry,
and,
both Ryan and I like had a reaction to that. We're just like,
he had to have some sort of trampoline or jump board down there or something.
Yeah, like I thought maybe a wire because of how gracefully the ball falls. Like, could it be a wire for the ball that they had just attached to him just for that? Because I don't think humans move that way. So
I feel like the ball was weighted the whole time. But I don't know. Did they use wires back then in that way?
I don't know. Again, this is his first talkie, just to even place it in terms of time.
I have seen the ending speech, but it was even though I knew it was not a silent film, it was just a little strange to see Charlie Chaplin come on stage and immediately start talking. It's like, oh, that's different.
it gives it a different punch, for sure.
I mean, he's a talented actor, you know, and not just silent film wise.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not an expert on Charlie Chaplin's movies. I think I've seen, what is that one? City Lights and Modern Times. Of course, yeah, that one's also really impressive when he's going through the gears and stuff. But anyway, by this point in 1940, he had been a movie star doing these kind of slapstick comedies for 20 years at this point. So he was very practiced at movement and stunts. And I think he always or almost always directed his own movies. So he was also very experienced at directing. So like all of that skill and practice just sort of came together here, and it does give a very like a bigger emotional punch that this is his first talkie, and he's making this speech about humanity coming together and you know living in peace and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie was nominated for 5 awards and did not win any Academy Awards.
Shame.
It was released on the same year as The Philadelphia Story, The Grapes of Wrath, Rebecca, Pinocchio.
Wow.
So those are all the productions it lost out to. What a crazy year for movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all classics. Like a lot of people say that 1939 was the best year for movies ever, but yeah, listening to that list, it seems like 1940 was also a pretty amazing year.
Fantasia also came out in 1940.
That's wild.
I imagine 1939 is listed as that because of Gone with the Wind
Mm.
and The Wizard of Oz. So,
Yeah, I thought it was funny in this film. What I noticed as far as the comedy goes is that most gags he would do twice, which I found interesting. Like it wouldn't be just like one and then laugh, done. It's like, no, you have to see it again to really appreciate the joke.
the first time is for shock value. The second time is so that you understand the production.
I guess. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Like every time he did that, I was like, but why? Like where did you saw that?
It's almost above criticism, but I think comparing it to like modern jokes and stuff, I think some of the gags went on just a little too long for a lot of the scenes. And being that
and
runtime
were often repeated.
Yes, and repeated. And again, it could it's just a time thing, right? But it was 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. And it just feels like you could cut 30 minutes of gags.
I think I remember when, because this movie was suggested by Beckett.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I remember watching this movie and I remember being kind of bored. And I was like, I don't know why though, because it's a great movie, but I remember being bored. And I think that's it. Is it just like the comedic timing really just needs to be trimmed down, tighten it up a bit.
Yeah. I think it's obviously a sign of the time that it was made in. Like this was before, film comedies really became how we know them today. So it's kind of like a genre in development.
But if you go watch some Three Stooges, they don't drag, like, I don't know. They do go a little longer, but I just feel like it's a little bit more concise. Like the food fight scene was good, but again, just you could have cut like one or two of those gags. It just and we were watching that behind, it's not even behind the scenes. It was his brother's like home movies, and there's like a whole bunch of footage of the dance that they cut from the movie. So like there is stuff that didn't make it into the film, but
I imagine it's a lot like we did one of our very first film clubs was Buster Keaton, and I brought up like how much I know about how many times he would try the same joke from different angles, and it kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Except occasionally he would just keep both the takes in. He's like, I can't decide between the two. Put them both in.
Right. The bulletproof uniform and the parachute hat are both very funny, but maybe not have one scene in between them and then do the same. It's fine. Again, it was a different time. And
but I don't think that's something that I noticed in other Charlie Chaplin, though, because I have watched a few other Charlie Chaplin movies as well. And it doesn't quite feel like the scenes drag on quite as long. So I wonder if it was a something he did fund this pretty much all on his own. So maybe it was him making the calls as opposed to somebody else being like, cut it down.
Right. Yeah, I do. I wonder if he did get notes. Again, though, he didn't have distribution lined up when he made it. He just made it, and thankfully it worked out. He doubled his money on it.
Well, he's Charlie Chaplin. Who was going to say no?
Right, but this is again, I think when he made this movie, a large part of America was kind of pro-Nazi, pro-Germany. And so to go into a movie with a bit of a controversial take, again, it shouldn't be controversial, but yeah, then knowing now, that was a huge risk. What was the last one we did with Buster Keaton? Like, that movie I don't think did well financially. What was the Buster Keaton movie?
The Great Locomotive, or the Great Train Robbery.
The Great
Train Chase, something along those lines.
Yeah, that one.
It involves robbing a train and then chasing the train. So
which
combination
was a Civil War story where he took the side of the South. Again, a big controversial. And then he had to find distribution. He struggled because he had to go. He went to promote it in the South because he had a better audience down there. But just again, yeah,
it is very true that this movie was controversial in America because it was pre-Pearl Harbor. So officially, America was supposed to be isolationist or almost neutral, but not quite. And the documentary on the Criterion Channel sort of goes into this, and they have footage of the American Nazi Party. And it's a bit shocking to see how big their crowds were. And they were like standing with swastikas on their arms in front of paintings of George Washington and making speeches that were pro-Nazi and things like that. So there was that element also in America. It was like there was the official government stance was to be almost neutral about Nazis. And then there was also the far right who were pro-Nazi. And so there was a lot of pushback on Charlie Chaplin when he made this movie. And there were like, the documentary also shows like political cartoons that were anti-Chaplin, and they were like making fun of him because he was anti-Nazi, basically. Yeah.
And to your point, he also had concerns. I read somewhere that playing a Jewish character, because a lot of places were anti-Semitic, so that was a risk for him also. Which, again, not a great time.
So I'm reading about an interesting plagiarism lawsuit.
I saw that as well.
Do you know about this, Derek?
Yeah, I saw that, I think, on the Wikipedia page. I don't know the details.
I
yeah.
also don't really know much of the details, but I thought it was interesting because it turns out that Charlie Chaplin's half-brother, Sidney Chaplin, directed and starred in a movie in 1921 called King, Queen, Joker, in which Charlie Chaplin also played dual roles of a barber and the ruler of a country which was about to be overthrown. But then more than 20 years after that, in 1947, a Romanian guy came out and was like, you stole the ideas for this, when The Great Dictator came out. Nobody brought up this other movie that has literally pretty much the same plot line, including Charlie Chaplin playing...
Well, Sidney Chaplin.
No, Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, did he star in it too?
Played the dual role of barber. And
yes. No, Sidney. It was starring Sidney Chaplin.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Charlie. It was a...
It might have been. Okay. But like nobody addressed this earlier one. But I guess Charlie Chaplin paid the guy out. So
it has a bit of a different ending at the end, though. The humorous barber who resembles the king falls in with some terrorists and agrees to take the king's place after he's kidnapped. The barber then plays the king, and there are several humorous episodes. The real king escapes, and the barber is sentenced to be shot. The film ends with an automobile chase and a transfer to a plane. So a little bit different, similar setup, but I'm going to say the execution probably significantly different.
Yeah, I
But
think
I imagine they shared notes, but it was also probably perfectly fine between them. This was just some other guy that was like trying to make money off of it, I guess, in 1947.
Right. Or if he owned the rights to it and he just tried to cash in.
This movie has the problem of it has such a very clear message for it that I don't actually have a lot of like discussion topics for it. So mostly what I wanted to spend time talking about was, one, the influences that it caused afterwards, almost the use of comedy in a really rough time. Jojo Rabbit, the Dictator. The Interview. I was like, I literally just read this list on Wikipedia. I can come up with it. And just like the long-standing legacy of this, or even just how often I see the final message for it come up on social media just constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, somehow I don't think that if this had happened in real life, it would go that way.
I don't know. If you had the world leader, or sorry, not the world leader, but the country's leader had just invaded a country and then came out and was like, you know what? Let's be nice to everybody. I don't know what would happen. It certainly would be interesting. I'm looking at that list of movies inspired. Dr. Strangelove is one, including the fact that Peter Sellers plays multiple characters.
Yeah, I also think like the food fight scene, or wait, is the food fight in was that a deleted scene? Because there's a food fight in Doctor Strangelove, but I can't remember if it was deleted. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I would say like the food fight in The Great Dictator definitely had an influence on the food fight in Doctor Strangelove, but I can't remember if that food fight was a deleted scene in Strangelove. But definitely like the in Strangelove, the leaders are always fighting in the war room. That's definitely in the movie. It's not deleted. And I got that same feeling when watching Hinkle and the Italian guy Napoleoni, or whoever the Mussolini.
Napolini.
Yeah, Napolini. When Hinkle and Napolini were sort of fighting each other or trying to one up each other. I got that same feeling from Strangelove.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I loved the just creative plays on the names of everything. Like instead of Austria, it's like it's spelled something like ostrich, but it's pronounced ostrich. Which is what it sounds like in German. In German, it's Österreich.
Yeah, Ostrich.
Ostrich.
Yeah, Tomania. And I still just think that Italy is just called bacteria is funny. I don't know why he decided to go that route. But
something against Italy, I guess.
Well, they weren't doing great things either.
But yeah, it's such good satire of the time frame, just making light of a very, very granted, he didn't know. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say. I am happy that I revisited it because the first time I watched it, I kind of just remember being bored a lot of the time, but being able to like watch it again, I think that good movies deserve to be watched twice. And I am gonna have to check out the documentary because it is on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can find
Yeah,
the whole thing on YouTube.
I would like to watch that too.
There are some other interesting things that I found from this. There's a movie that was inspired by this that's a Georgian movie that I kind of want to watch now. A Georgian movie, it's called Repentance. And it's essentially this, but with communism.
Yeah, I want to watch Doctor Strangelove again. It's been a really long time.
I love Doctor Strangelove.
So when we were watching this, have you ever heard of a movie called The Day the Clown Cried?
Yeah.
Eric has.
Yeah.
There's a chance it'll come out. It got screened for the first time. It was shot in the 72. It's Jerry Lewis playing a clown in a concentration camp. And it's the again, the story of it is insane. And I'm pretty sure there's some documentaries about it already. But anyways, there's a chance we're going to see this movie this year of Jerry Lewis being taken to a concentration camp and agreeing to be a clown to trick kids into a gas chamber. Yeah. Now you're getting it.
I mean, I got it before, but then you added that to it.
Well, I guess the documentary called The Last Laugh. Yeah, it's one of those where it's because it's more of a character piece about kind of he's a bad person and kind of a redemption arc. But anyways, I'm excited to see that whenever it finally gets some sort of release. And it made me think or this movie made me kind of remember that existed.
He's talked about it nonstop since we watched this movie.
It's insane. Okay.
It's insane.
Jerry Lewis, the Nutty Professor, whose big contribution is he goes cross-eyed and has a nerd voice, made a movie about a clown in a concentration camp. And not only that, he funded it himself because the funding fell out and he felt it was important. It was an important story that he wanted to get made. And
also, his character's name in it is Helmut Dork. So when that gets released, we'll be adding it to the roster of movies to watch.
But anyway.
Yeah. But outside of that, like I said, I don't actually have a lot of things to talk about with this movie. It's one of those movies that's like very clear to me from start to finish. And outside of how they did the production on a lot of these, I don't have a lot of conversation topics. So I am willing to, open it to the group if somebody has something that they'd really like to discuss in regards to this movie.
As a German speaker, I thought his gibberish German was hilarious because he did actually throw actual German words in there.
He did.
Oh, I heard schnitzel in there, schnitzel a couple times.
And more than just things that everyone knows, like food. I forget specifically, but there were a couple times where I'm like, oh, I got that. But then most of it was just Hubenhaben a lot.
There's a theory that an old teacher of mine had that when you're asked to do gibberish, you'll speak gibberish in whatever language you think sounds the hardest to learn. So, what language does your gibberish sound like? And when I heard it, I did hear him like slipping into German every now and then, and part of me was like, I wonder if he has to remind himself that he's speaking German gibberish.
That he's not supposed to actually be saying things.
No, like he's saying things to remind him that this is supposed to be German.
Oh.
It's not supposed to mean anything, but it's supposed to be German.
Yeah, because sometimes he would kind of like slip into, oh, that's more English sounding. But I thought it was really funny.
Was that your favorite gag?
No, I liked the globe scene, and I liked the first one on the AA gun. That was hilarious.
I'm a big fan of the use of miniatures in general. I really enjoyed the plane upside down in the beginning of just so good. I'm trying to think what other miniatures they did. I think they had a couple tanks, and then the rear projection for the train scene. Favorite gag.
Yeah, I noticed when he was dropping the luggage off the roof, that was rear projected. That was the only one I noticed, though.
I think the coin in the like cake gag was pretty good. That was kind of a I Love Lucy-esque, like.
Yeah.
Is it bad that I thought through that scene, I thought of all the ways that could go wrong? If you put something, are you going to stop eating your cake when you realize that somebody else has drawn the coin? Wouldn't it have been better to just take it out of the cake and none of them have it? Or I don't know exactly what.
That's not funny. This was funny. He's got to eat 5 coins. Secretly. But also, there was a little bit of, and again, he didn't know, but there was a little tinge of the Jewish people should have fought harder in this. And I think I brought it up to you, Rebecca, but it was just kind of like, because the woman, what's her name? The
Hannah?
seamstress, Hannah. Like, she was very much like, come on, get out there, fight. We got to stand up for ourselves.
I think that goes back to they didn't realize how bad it was.
Right.
From their point of view, yeah, just stand up for yourself.
Right, but to that point of they're all, again, whoever gets the coin gets to sacrifice their life to stop Hitler, and like they're all avoiding getting into, it was nothing, but in my mind it did leave a little bit of a kind of pushed the blame a little bit.
And I think that is just a symptom of, the propaganda at the time and not really realizing, because according to the film, it was all just laws enacted, horrible discriminatory laws. But, in reality, if you had hit an SS soldier with a pan, he would have shot you. Like,
right.
It wasn't, yeah. But
I mean, they were going to hang him out in the street for trying to wipe a Jew off of the front. Anyways, yes, it was, yes.
That's true.
Anyway, sorry. It was just one thing that in my head that was just kind of like, well, that's not.
Do you think that he actually remembered Herr Schultz in that time frame, or do you think he was just like, yeah, sure, the war?
Oh, he didn't remember the plane.
Yeah, he didn't remember anything. He had amnesia.
He didn't remember any of it, and then he was just like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm more confused how Schultz didn't confuse the two, because he knows both Hinkle and after 20 years still remembers the guy who saved him in the plane.
Plot holes.
On this rewatch, I did feel, I mean, like people said earlier, that it is kind of long for what it is, and also I felt it was a bit clunky in terms of the plot. Basically, it opens with the World War I scenes, which were great, but then there's a 20-year time jump, and there's this scene in the hospital with a bunch of doctors explaining what's going on instead of just showing the character with amnesia. They're just these doctors who explain that he has amnesia and that he escaped. And then all of a sudden, the main character, the barber, is back at his barber shop. And it just seemed like a bit of a clunky way of doing it. And it happened again, I guess, when they escaped from the concentration camp. I think there's a character who just explains that they escaped. They don't actually show the escape. And there were just things like that. And also, I felt all of the thing that everybody remembers about this movie, apart from the thing they remember about the plot itself, not just like the globe scene and the big speech at the end, but the plot itself is that this barber gets mistaken for the dictator. But that doesn't happen until 10 minutes before the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like if this was the main point of the movie, they could have had it happen sooner or something. And there were, instead of that, the movie kind of switches back and forth between scenes of the barber doing stuff and scenes of the dictator doing stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they're doing are very funny sight gags, but they don't necessarily have a plot purpose, I guess. So that would be my criticism on this rewatch, is that the plot itself is a bit clunky, or it could have been streamlined and they could have shown more. But I still laughed at the visual gags and like the stunts and things of that nature. So I still enjoyed it. But yeah, just the plot structure sort of bothered me.
I actually forgot how late in the movie it takes for them to like get confused for each other. Like
Yeah,
I just
it's
kept
like-
waiting for it, and I was like, wait, it doesn't happen until the end.
Why couldn't that have been the plan? You know, like they're trying to overthrow the dictator, and what's his face knows his friend from the war looks just like him.
Yeah, no, I agree with all these points. Yeah, it feels like they definitely could have leaned in harder on that plot point. But and to an earlier point you made, Derek, of like we got that amnesia explanation before, when Mr. Whoever that, what's his name, the Jewish guy in the Yakel, of like, yeah, he's been gone for 20 years. He has amnesia. He's at the hospital. And so we got it twice.
Mhm.
And also, they didn't do anything with his shop for 20 years.
They kept a bunch of cats in it.
They did keep a bunch of kittens in there for some reason. I do like the gag where he put the money in his pocket and he just kept like weird stuff in his cash register. That was a fun little bit.
I just remember this because, yeah, I watched it with Ryan, and he was like, I don't know what he did to her when they decide that they're going to change it to like a beauty parlor, and he shaves her face, but all he does is let her hair down. And it took Ryan like a few times. He was like, did they change her hair? Like what?
they just kind of cleaned her face, and then
They took a bunch of like mud that was like on her face off, and it was just like beauty parlor.
Curled her hair a bit.
yeah, a
Put a
little bit.
bow in it.
It's that easy, guys.
It's all it took.
And suddenly she's beautiful.
Oh,
All
Hannah.
it takes is to shave your face.
Ladies. Yeah.
Alright. Yeah. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this movie?
How can you, like, with the like okay, are we going to do the full 25 point?
No, I'm just doing this
Review,
like
or-
as a basis. Like how many? We could even do like 1 to 5, 1 to 5 stars, or
No,
even just did you like it?
I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a little unfair to critique it against A, what we know now about World War II, and B, the time frame that has passed since this movie was made. Like, so it's like, do I rate it from a standpoint of watching it as a Charlie Chaplin fan in the 40s, or like, I don't.
You rate it as you now.
I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a funny movie.
All right.
I'm going to say 4 out of 5. It was a lot of good laughs, a little bit long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. Maybe like 3.5 out of 5 or something for me, or 7 out of 10. I think, yeah, like I said, the plot sort of bothered me on this rewatch, but I think, like, as if I'm critiquing it also as like a historical, like its historical importance, I do think it is like an important movie in terms of the risks that Chaplin took to get it made, not just financially, but just to his reputation, and just standing up to Hitler at a time when that wasn't really done in the movie industry. I, yeah, I would raise its score a bit for historical importance, but I'm not sure what I would raise it to. I guess
Yeah.
just enjoyment level, I would say 7 out of 10 for me, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that the oh, I've lost my train of thought. I'm also very tired tonight. But just like what was I going to say? Damn it.
I think that
Something about the historical context.
yeah, I think it's important to remember that while like rating things. I always think that you have to let things like sit for a little bit, because yeah, there's a lot of things when it comes to grading things, but I just mean on just basic level of enjoyment based on the material and information that you have now.
I remembered my thought. I was just going to add to Ryan's point about the plot being kind of messy, that I don't think the plot is the main point of the movie. The main point is to make fun of Hitler. So.
You're correct. I again, the speech at the end alone was just, it still resonates now, right? Like, it's still something that society is striving for. We haven't quite gotten there yet. There's still pockets of, but yeah. Again, the message is amazing. The influence on Kubrick and Mel Brooks and Tarantino, obviously, a lot of folks. Is how do you measure that? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing film historically, and yeah, still entertaining today.
We are coming up on an hour here, so I do want to just check. I know that I checked a little bit ago, so I think we've covered everything, but is there anything else anybody wants to discuss before we end the meeting for the night?
Nope.
Well, on that note, I enjoyed discussing this with you all, and I hope to talk to you about the next pick.